بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد. This is the first lesson in our new series entitled Ghazali in Love. Let's begin by talking about the equations of the soul. Human relationships are either formative or generative. Formative means a knowledge that is absorbed. Generative means a knowledge that is produced. And human relationships take on one or both of these modes. Formative relationships shape the fitrah. But it doesn't just refer to babies and very young children. It means any relationship in which the fitrah is retaining. For example, those who do not engage in premarital relationships, for them, marriage is a formative relationship because it is the very first experience in that form of interaction. And therefore, the fitrah retains that knowledge and absorbs it as reality. And that is why for Muslims in particular, marrying young can either work for or against the marriage. Because a young couple with no previous romantic relationships is mutually fitrah forming. And that can serve to solidify ties in the marriage if the spouses are emotionally and spiritually mature. But if they aren't, then it sets up patterns that misinform and damage the soul. And that leads us to the definition of trauma. In the most simple terms, trauma is when the equation of the soul doesn't add up. Because the fitrah is the pre-sentence of the soul. It already has sentence structures programmed into it. However, when it enters the temporal world, it receives input. So if that input is negative, the soul will register an anomaly. Why? Because God said so. لا تبديل لخلق الله. There can be no distortion of the creation of God. The fitrah is the primordial template. When God wills to bring that fitrah into the world, it is transformed into a soul, which God deposits into the womb of the mother. This is mentioned in the hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. Verily, the creation of each one of you is brought together in the mother's womb for 40 days in the form of a nutfah. Then it becomes a alaqa for a similar period. Then it becomes a mudgha for a similar period. Then the angel is sent to him who breathes the soul into him and is commanded to write 4 things: his rizq, his lifespan, his deeds, and whether or not he will be ultimately blessed or wretched. Related by Bukhari and Muslim. So the fitrah does not change. But the soul, upon entering the world, if it receives input that contradicts its nature, that is trauma. It is a formative distortion of the soul. The term trauma is really flung around very casually. Trauma is not having a bad hair day, losing a friend, and then tripping on a branch, and then running over a deer with your car, and then developing a new blemish on your face all in one day. You'll be okay. Most people know that, I think. I hope. But what they don't know is that the Sharia was legislated precisely to preclude and heal trauma. How? It works on the heart. Why? Because of the original reality we mentioned, that human relationships are either formative or generative. Thus, the Sharia is designed to preempt trauma to the soul by governing formative relationships. And it is designed to heal trauma by governing generative relationships. So, fiqh al-mu'amalat, as it is termed in the classical works of fiqh, is based on this framework. But sadly, because the majority of those who study fiqh do so while severing it from this fitri framework, they often conceptualize it in a way that is reflective of the ego's formation as opposed to the divine formation. And soon we will be exploring several case studies in which we take concrete examples from the sacred law and compare the divine formation to the terrible distortions that ensue through the ego's formation. But for now, we want to focus on the practical. Namely, how does the Sharia guide us in cultivating a sound heart, especially in a time where most people do have traces of formative and generative trauma? So in the next part of this lesson, we begin an exploration of the path to a sound heart and the three main pillars upon which it rests. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد نور الأنوار وسر الأسرار وترياق الأغيار ومفتاح باب اليسار سيدنا محمد المختار وآله الأطهار وأصحابه الأخيار عدد نعم الله وإفضاله والحمد لله رب العالمين.